What is good, everyone? This is your host, Deanna Kemple, Label Free Podcast. Live your best life. You must live label free. My next guest is joining us from the East Coast. I love the East Coast. He is going to actually tell a little bit more about himself. Please welcome Mark V. Smith. Mark, thank you for joining us today. Can you please tell the audience a little bit about your background? And I'm looking forward to hearing your story.
Thank you, Dan. First and foremost, thank you for having me today. Who am I? Wow, that's the $1 billion question. I was born and raised in Columbus, Ohio. Diehard Buckeye through and through. Moved to the West Coast for 13 years after my adulthood. True adulthood. I like to say I grew up on the West Coast because that's when I really figured out who I was. I left the West Coast back in 2011 and moved to a town right out. Well, I moved to DC first. Then after I left DC because I didn't want to deal with the hustle and bustle of things going on in DC. So I slid back a little bit further to the south and settled inside of a town called Laurel, Maryland. So I'm still in between, 13 miles from Baltimore, 13 miles from DC. So I can get nightlife if I want to go south. Yeah. I can get the best crab cakes in the world if I want to go north. So I have a little bit of both. But I became more and more entangled in speaking words of passion and words of belief into individuals. Long before I got here, I started out in post-secondary education. I moved into the Department of Labor for a stint and was a vice president of an organization, Mid-Atlantic Career Counseling Association, for a period of time. So I've traveled quite a bit, worked with the National Black Police Officers Association on their board and created some projects and speaking engagements with them. So I've done a lot, seen a lot, have a lot, but you know what, Dan, I still got more to do.
I love that. And I love your energy. And I completely agree with that. I mean, I feel like, we're put on this planet to just kind of live our legends, right? And, we should never stop going after things and doing our part, giving back to society. So you're also a podcast host too.
Yes, I do. I host a podcast called The Process, and I developed that coincidentally by things occurring in my life and taking the time to really revisit some of those things. But I said that, I've always asked, why? Why did you create a podcast called The Process? And it was just 3 simple reasons, 3 things that I said I've got to get out there. One, I believe that my story has the potential to change someone's life. Everybody has a story. The fact is, are we willing to tell our story? Yeah. Because everybody has to go through to get through. Yeah. That's a fact of life. The second thing is my story is worth sharing, even if it only changes one life. I spoke a couple of weeks ago at a virtual conference in right outside of Chicago.
Oh, okay.
And a lady asked me, when we took a short break, she said, "Mark, what is your goal? What do you ultimately want to accomplish in this speaking and talking to people and talking about growth?" I said, "I want to change 100,000 lives." And she gave me a blank stare and she said, 100,000, that's a lofty task, isn't it? I said, "Not really. If you think 1 changes 2, 2 changes 4, 4 changes 8, it becomes significant down the path of progression." And lastly, I like to tell everybody that, back in the day and in the world today, we are so consumed of what society thinks of us and how we're portrayed and what their quote unquote acceptance label is. So the third thing that I created, and I had to get out when I said, when I created The Process, it says, I basically feel that I'm defined by God and what God says about me, not what other people think of me. Yeah. And a lot of times, I said before, we worry, and whether you believe in God, whether you believe in Buddha, whatever you believe in, whatever your higher calling is, you're defined by that entity, not by what society says. So that is the essence of why I created The Process, but it's to give people a blueprint, a resource to always go back to when they go through trials and tribulations.
So you talk about growth and progression and sharing your story with what you've gone through. So can you tell us a little bit about that? Like, maybe some of the things that you've gone through that has gotten you to where you are today, to be sharing your story here on my podcast?
Absolutely. In 2003, early on, I didn't have the greatest, like a lot of men, I didn't have the greatest relationship with their fathers. As I grew older, excuse me, as I grew wiser, not older, I realized that a lot of it was my own. It was my own problem. It wasn't his, because he was doing what he needed to do to provide for the house and provide for us. So um, we had a strained relationship in high school, in my early years of college, and in my young adult years. But we meant that relationship. Well, my father developed a prostate cancer at a young age.
Oh,
He was
wow.
60. My father was he was 62 years old when he passed away, and that was 20 years ago. So I always thought about what it'd been like to have him there to see me where I am now versus
Sure.
where I was then. But coincidentally, I what started this, or what started my path to kind of reevaluate my life. And I always say, Deanna, some people can see, but not many people have vision. I
Right.
could see what I wanted with my life, but the vision didn't happen till my father passed. And coincidentally, he passed in 2003 on my birthday.
Oh my goodness.
I was facilitating a class at that time. I was living in Arizona. I was facilitating a workshop, and I got a phone call from my son. And I was just thinking he was just calling to tell me that he was home from school, which was their traditional thing that they did. And I remember going back into my office and saying, "Okay, I'm going to listen to this voicemail." And I just remember his voice telling me, "Dad," and they called my dad Poppy. They said, "Poppy died."
Oh,
And that was probably one of the toughest moments in my life, that I felt alone. I
yeah.
felt that I had my that was my best friend, for all intents and purposes. So
Yeah.
I had to figure out what I was going to do with my life. But I also remembered, and helped me create, when I helped create the process, I said, what was that incident like? What was it truly speaking to me? And I said that was growth, Deanna. And growth for me, as people know me and listen to my podcast, know that I write in acronyms. And I write in acronyms because it's easier to retain and remember. So I
Yeah.
said growth stood for gradual reminder, obstacles will test hope. That's growth.
Yeah.
So that particular incident, or that particular element in my life, was an obstacle that really was going to test my hope, test my perseverance, test my will to continue on. But just as important, test my resolve to try to understand, to try to grasp something that I had not experienced before, but
Yeah.
really needed to take who I was and go from, I like to use that old adage, really, really, truly go from boy to man. So
Yeah.
that is where some of the framework of the process came from.
So now is the process, I know it's a podcast, but is it also like a system that you've created to help coach people?
It the pro I like to tell everybody, the simplest way to think about the process is, think about the time that you've ever sat down and baked a cake with your mom, your dad, your girlfriend, your
Okay.
boyfriend. Think about that. You go through a systematic way to make
Yeah.
sure that things are done. The one thing that is constant in your cake, my cake, your listeners' cake, is we need a heat source, right?
Right.
We just can't take eggs and just start eating and start eating flour. We need a heat source. So once we heat that process, or heat our life up, then that's when things actually come. It grows, accelerates. So, but the difference in what you go through, I go through, everybody goes through, is the ingredients.
Yeah.
I use the analogy light bag versus heavy bag. See, all that stuff that we put
Yeah.
in that cake can make it super duper heavy and take longer to bake,
Right.
make us longer to mature. If
Yeah.
we put lighter ingredients inside that cake, that means that our life, the different things that we go through in our life, shouldn't be as traumatic. They will be traumatic, but we will find different ways and different answers to deal with it. So
Right.
the process is, it's that cake that's consistently being baked, consistent ingredients putting into it, that make us who we are, and our strong evolution steps to get us to where we need to be and where
So
we're
you're
called to be.
so you're helping people refine their ingredients so that they're more consistent in what they're baking.
Absolutely. There we go.
I like it.
There we go.
Support for Label Free Podcast is brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below the waist grooming. Now, ladies, you can use this too. We're all inclusive here. Manscaped is trusted by over 2 million men worldwide. And now we're going to have the ladies too, because come on, ladies, let's be real. We have an exclusive offer for my listeners, 20% off plus free shipping with the code labelfree20 at manscaped.com. So thank you, Manscaped, for your support. And everybody is welcome to purchase with my code. And
There
so
we go.
you're focused on growth and progression. And so why are you focused on those two things?
Because nothing stays the same. Change is inevitable. You're
Okay.
going to you don't have a choice. It's going to happen at some point. And I was having a conversation with a good friend of mine a couple of weeks ago, and he said, "Mark, how do you feel about change?" I said, "You know what?" I said, "I embrace it. I
Yes.
didn't at once, but I have to." But the fact of the matter, Deanna, is most people don't change until the pain of staying the same is greater than the change. Period. They just
Yes.
don't. And it could be and it could be because they're scared of
Yes.
what could be. Because we know statistically more people are afraid of success. Just as many people are afraid of success as they are of failure.
Yes.
So they don't want to get, we become comfortable, or as I say, comfort is a casualty of growth. We have to get to the point, or I like to see us, or I coach to get to the mindset that it's okay to dare to be different. It's really all
Yeah.
right. You
Absolutely.
won't know how, you don't know how far you potentially can go in life until you try it. You're never too old to do it. Why don't you only got one life. That's
Yeah.
it. You got 86,400 seconds in a day. You got it. I got it. We all got it.
Yep.
What are you going to do with it? Do you want to live it at your and reach your best life? Or do you want to stay right where you are? At the end of the day, it's your call. But I'm challenging you to do what you need to do to reach your best life.
So where could people find you, reach out to you, connect with you?
Absolutely. They can actually visit my website. That's theprocessmarksmith.com. I'm on all social media platforms. You can find me on Facebook under Father and Friend. You can find me on Instagram under Within Your Process. LinkedIn under Mark V Smith. Make sure you put that V in there. There's
Okay.
a lot of Mark Smiths, as well as on YouTube. I just released a YouTube video, a commercial for my series that I'm doing. If I only knew then what I know now, that just released 2 days ago, 11,000 views. So
Wow,
yeah,
congratulations.
thank you. So connect with me. Shoot me an email, mark@theprocessmarksmith.com. I love the dialogue with you. I love to have an opportunity to share this work that I'm doing. So we all collectively, if everybody makes that commitment to change 100,000 lives, we live in a better world filled with unity.
Amen to that. And so if somebody does want to work with you, what does that look like for them?
Well, it looks like a lot. It's just a complete collaboration. Again,
Okay.
I talk with them, they talk with me. I find out where they want to go. I let them know what I do, and
Yeah.
then we take it from there. It's about a lot of fact finding, a lot of deciding where they truly want to be in their life.
Awesome. Do you have anybody that you've collaborated with that you'd like a story you'd like to share? So you can give an example.
I do. I've collaborated with John Tay Hall. John Tay Hall is, for some people know that he's was a world famous Harlem Globetrotter.
Oh,
They,
wow.
he's identified as too tall, or excuse me, not so tall Hall. So he
Okay.
actually lives in the Maryland area. So he and I have gone on to went in Baltimore, spoke at a couple of venues in Baltimore. We spoke at the convention center in DC, and we just kind of we share a common message of that no matter what society says, you are purpose. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter how short, how tall, your background, your race, your color, your creed, your mother, your father, where you came from. It's about where you choose to go. So
Yeah.
we've done several work in several venues on that as well. I'm working with Cornelius Green, who used to play for Ohio State University, first African American quarterback at the Ohio State University.
Wow.
And I've worked with a couple other individuals, and I've got something that's churning right now that I can't talk about yet. But once it's solidified, everybody will definitely, who follows my website and follows me, they'll
I love
hear
it. We
about
always got these projects going on us type A people. We're always like, I got something in the works, but I can't tell you.
it. I tell you.
I feel like you've got a book coming up though. I think that I can see that in your future.
Absolutely. I've written 6 episodes thus far in the process. The
Oh,
first
okay.
so the first one is was the foundation. The second was the perfect storm. The third series was where do we go from here? The fourth is why not me? The fifth is procrastination, a thief of time. And the one that I'm in right now, which the video and short story is about, is if I only knew then what I know now. It's going to be a collection of 10 episodes, and there's 8 messages inside each episode. So that lets people know there's a lot of information, a lot of
Yeah.
acronyms inside there. But once I get to 10, then yes, we are ready to launch this book, put it all together, wrap it up, and get it out there to everybody.
Awesome. So you're gonna have to like keep us posted so that we can share that update with the audience. I think
I
that's very exciting. So we are actually for the podcast, we're working on a book as well. We're going to be publishing a series of all of our stories on all our guests, just to kind of living labeled free,
Mhm.
so it's gonna be that I'm kind of scared of the process because I'm like, oh, this just sounds like so much work, but I think it's gonna be good. I think it's important to put all these messages, like your message, my previous guest messages, out there into the world so people can have it there, whatever they can relate to or touches their heart, you know what I mean? So before we start wrapping things up, I always like to ask my guests for any last words of wisdom or advice. What would you like to share with them today?
I would probably say that the biggest thing is believe in yourself. Always, always. My grandfather used to tell me, Mark, all the time. He said, "Let me tell you something. If you ever bet on yourself.
Yeah.
Bet on yourself to win, and do it not for you, do it for the ones that you love. Because innately, we fight harder for the ones we love than we will for ourselves." But as I always close, I always tell everybody, as I always close with a simple message, and that's just simple. Your why is greater than your situation, which is part of your process. So embrace change. Understand that change is not bad, it's good. And as you go through those changes, it is part of your process, it is part of your development, it's where you're called to be, and it is really truly where you're called to go. Live life the best way that you can.
Yes, I love that. That's awesome. Yes, totally. I'm trying to live the best way that I can every day. Well, Mark, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you as a guest. I'm looking forward to hearing about your book that's coming out, and so that we can share that with the audience. You guys, I'm going to put all Mark's links in the show notes, so don't hesitate to reach out to him, contact, follow him, support him. Go check out his podcast. I'm sure you're streaming on every audio platform.
Yes, yes, yes,
And
I
the name
am.
of that podcast is called again?
The name of the podcast is called The Process.
Awesome. So the Process Podcast. So if you're loving my podcast, go check Mark out and give him a follow and support his work as well. This is your host, Deanna Kemp with Label Free Podcast. Live your best life. You must live label free. Please don't forget to follow, share, comment, rate, review, all that good stuff. And I'll be back soon with more dynamic guests.